Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience for Sunday, April 15th, 2007. It's tax day.
All right.
That's always a terrible thing. If somebody's going to be late, I know it's you. You're watching right now. You got no excuse. We are live. As I said, it's April 15th, 2007. We're live every Sunday except when we get preempted by the Mormons. This is a live public access show providing the atheist community of Austin the opportunity to speak to the public and for the public to call in and ask questions to discuss religion, politics, whatever issues are relevant. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. And the ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Ventana del Sol on East Old Torf on South I-30, or just off of I-35. In addition to the Sunday morning meeting that happens every Sunday, that it's sometimes canceled, so that we can have a lecture series on the first Sunday of the month at the Austin History Center located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. For the month of April, instead of having it on the first Sunday of the month, we had it on the third Sunday, which was today. We had Lori Lippman Brown, who is the lobbyist for the Secular Coalition of America. We flew her in from Washington, D.C. to come down and speak to us this morning. She gave a great lecture. We've got the lecture was recorded. What I'm going to try to do, if I can, if the audio quality is good enough, is put some of it together for a podcast later and maybe include clips from it on this show or put together a special show of that. Lots of guests in from out of town, both to see Lori and to come down and visit the studio. So the studio audience is actually kind of full today. A little unusual, but we're glad everybody is here. And Tracie Harris is with me. I'm Matt Dillahunty. I didn't say names or anything, did I?
That's okay. You're getting to it.
See, I'm slacking. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. This is Tracie Harris, who's co-hosting this week, and we're going to kind of continue the discussion that we had last time you were on.
Right.
But let me get a couple other announcements out of the way real quick. In addition to this program, the ACI also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's Prophetets. It's hosted by Dennis Lubay, who features Russell Glasser and myself. I'm going to go ahead and make the announcement now, as we're just a few weeks out. The next live show will be April 21st. The one that follows that will be on May 5th. And we will be having a special guest that week, Vic Stenger, author of God, the Failed Hypothesis, How Science Demonstrates That There's No God, or that's not the actual subtitle, but it's close to that. He's coming to town. CFI, the Center for Inquiry in town, has decided to bring him down for a book signing event. They'll be at Book People on Saturday, and they're giving a lecture that Saturday night. You can get more details from the CFI website, and we'll give more details as we get closer. And Vic has graciously agreed to come on and be a guest on the Nonprofits on that week, May 5th, and also on the Atheist Experience on May 6th. So what's happening is in the span of that week, on, for example, May 3rd, we'll have the National Day of Reason to coincide with the National Day of Prayer. So we'll be having an event out at the Capitol building here downtown. And then the May 5th, we'll have Vic on the Nonprofits. The morning of May 6th is actually the ACA elections. All ACA members and anybody who's let their membership lapse, you're free to come in and pay your membership dues on the 6th, and you'll be able to vote in the election. So we get people down for that. And then the afternoon of the May 6th is when Vic will be on this program, which we're really looking forward to. It's a good book. There's lots to discuss, and we want to get people a heads up so that if you can read the book in advance or pick up the book on Saturday when he's in town giving the lecture, and come up with some good questions to ask him when he's here, and keep the phones tied up with reasonable questions. In addition to the lecture series, the television show, the podcast, we have a number of social events going on from time to time. Every Thursday is Atheist Happy Hour. Right now we're going to the Dog and Duck Pub downtown. There's more information at the website. You can see the website at the bottom of the screen, www.atheist-community.org. Anybody who doesn't get through, as I said, this is a live call-in program. We'll put the number up for you shortly. Anybody who doesn't get through on the phone or doesn't want to get through on the phone can email tv@atheist-community.org. That email goes to myself, all the co-hosts, and some of the people behind the scenes as well. And it's always good to remember that while I'm here every week and the co-hosts get to rotate, there's another group of people who are here every week setting up the studio, tearing down the studio, getting everything set up. And we're, as I've said a million times, we wouldn't have the show if it weren't for them, and they don't get enough credit. And so when you watch it, if you're watching on Google Video, because we're now on Google Video, normally the audio portion of the program was just available for download via podcast. But the video is now up on Google Video. Stay tuned till the end and watch the list of names that pop up down there. There's a lot of great people that help make this show happen. And lastly, we'll be going to Threadgills after the program, just like most every other week. We're on the air till 6 o'clock, and then at 6:30 or so, we'll meet at Threadgills on Riverside. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to attend any of our events. You don't have to be a member. There's no special requirements. But if you're coming down to preach, proselytize, or provoke, just hang on. I'll get the number up for you shortly, and you can call in and state your case on the phone if you want to. So where did we leave off last time?
Oh gosh, we had talked about what motivates people to believe in Christianity and what motivates people to leave Christianity for the choice of atheism. And I had pulled up a lot of information off the internet, just people giving testimonials about why they believe or why they left. And I think we had touched on those, started to touch on those a little bit, and didn't really get into the entire thing. We took some calls that were really on topic from people that we had, I think, one woman who actually seemed a little upset that we were saying that believers tend to lean toward emotional response, but then she acknowledged that she leans toward emotional response in her own belief. But
they're actually telling me that they can't hear you very well, so you might have to move your microphone up a little bit.
Sure. How's that? Is that better?
See, we're live. Okay. You saw that live. We had to fix things.
All right. Well,
it's better, though, because, we've had days where cameras didn't work and lights didn't turn on and phones didn't work. But
all right. And
so we had the one caller who was talking about...
Right, and she had acknowledged that she believes her Bible because it makes her feel good. And when she reads it, she thinks that it's right because it feels right to her. And I was just explaining to her that her feelings are... that's what a person feels is valid. That's their feelings.
Right.
And I didn't mean to try to tell her that there's something wrong with her listening to her feelings. No. I was just simply telling her this is the motivation that I see again and again and again. And
this ends up coming up a lot in what we do on the television show, because it's not like I don't go door to door and knock on people's door and say, "Hi, you believe in God? Why? I can fix that. Here, just listen to me for a minute." We do the show, and the people who want to tune in and talk can. And I don't begrudge anybody believing whatever they want. I mean, if you believe something for your own personal reasons and it makes sense to you, great. What you do on behalf of those beliefs now, that's quite another story, because if you're out imposing those beliefs on others or, pushing legislation that affects a lot of other people and you're doing it based on your own beliefs, you're right to do so and that you're honestly living by your own beliefs, but that doesn't mean that I'm just going to sit back and say, well, okay, they believe that, so I guess I'll just suffer through it. We need to actually we're a little more proactive than that about talking about issues. We had thrown down a lot of disclaimers last week. I don't know if I'll remember to throw them all out again, but just to kind of put out a few. What I was talking about specifically when we were talking about conversion and deconversion was not dealing with people who are kind of, individuals who don't really think a lot about God. There's a lot of people that don't put a lot of thought into religion, and then they might be approached by an apologist, and they may be swayed by apologetic arguments. They've maybe never, heard the arguments, maybe never heard the counter arguments, and so it is possible for a person to say, well, I was swayed by arguments I felt were reasonable based on what I was approached with by an apologist. But what I was dealing with mostly were the people who continue to study, like Christians who are very into their religion, who are very into reading their Bible, reading extracurricular material that has to do with different aspects of how other Christians might view this or that, or how this verse might be viewed. What are these words in Greek? What are these words in Aramaic? People who are really studying their Christianity. And also then when I looked at the atheists, or what we're calling the apostates, it was people who were very much into the idea that they're an atheist. They don't just have the label because they're like, yeah, I don't really think about God, but I'm not sure there is one, and I don't think there's a God, so I'm an atheist. Well, what I was dealing with and what I had labeled it was the skeptical atheist, or the skeptic. And that would be somebody who can tell you exactly why they are not a believer in God or gods. And in the same way that a Christian who is very much into their Christianity could explain, a lot about their Bible or a lot about their belief. I'm really not dealing with this sort of undercrowd, which I think it might be a majority of people actually that are just people that don't really think about anything. They may be Christians, they may not be Christians, they might be in a church, they might never go to church on Sunday, but these are people that just don't even think about religion. Yeah, it doesn't affect their daily life. I'm not calling those people Christians, atheists, whatever. We were dealing with people who have really put thought into whichever belief they've accepted. And what I found was that it seems like a lot of and not all, we talked about the idea of exceptions, but what was interesting to me is that when I mentioned on the program
that there are very few examples of skeptics converting to Christianity. What was interesting to me is that we immediately got some response from people saying, well, there's this person or this person. They named a couple people. Mm-hmm. And what I thought was interesting about that is that apparently it's so rare that you can name people. I mean, it's like you can count them on one hand.
The prime example that comes up almost every time is Lee Strobel, because in his books, Case for Christ, Case for Creator, he comes and pretends to be a skeptic. And I hate to be the, you hear all the time, well, he wasn't a true Christian. And I hate to be the guy who says, well, he wasn't a true skeptic. But he demonstrates that really wasn't the case by, softballing questions and not...
Well, he may have been a true atheist.
Oh, no, I have no doubt about that.
But that doesn't mean, just because someone says, I don't believe in God, doesn't mean that they truly understand the implications of what they're saying and why they're saying it. And, it may be honest that they don't believe that there's a God, but if you ask them why, a lot of times, I don't know, I just think it doesn't.
And that works the other way, as you were saying, too. There may be people who say, well, do you believe in God? Well, of course I believe in God. Well, why? And they just kind of stumble and him and hell or whatever else.
There's an undercrowd like that's, in any belief system. So, but that was not what we were talking about. We were talking about people that can actually address the question, why do you believe what you believe? Or why do you not believe what you don't believe? And one of the things that I had mentioned was, I think it was Martin Wagner's blog, when we had dealt with, one of the believers came on and just started throwing down, here's why you're atheist, here's why you believe what you believe. Completely wrong. His theories on why people were atheists were very incorrect. And I think he broke it down into two types of people, both of whom would actually have to believe in God in order to do what he says they were doing. He said that there are two people that reject the Bible and God. There are those who feel so guilty they've done something horribly wrong that they feel they would never be forgiven for it. Well, if you feel like God wouldn't forgive you, then you're not an atheist because you do believe in God. And he also said then there are those whose they love lifestyle or sin so much that they don't want to give it up for God or anyone. Well, if I don't want to give up my lifestyle for God, I still believe in God. And what I was trying to explain to the Christian on the blog was, you're talking to people who don't believe in God. You're not talking to people who have a problem with God or who feel like God wouldn't forgive them, or you're talking to people who do not believe there is a God.
And that's why he phrased it carefully by saying there's two types of people who reject God, because he doesn't look at atheism as any kind of rational conclusion. And he said it, and lots of others have said it before when they called in, there are people who are absolutely convinced that I still believe in God, I'm just lying and saying that I don't.
Right.
And there's absolutely nothing I can do to convince them except to keep saying, you're wrong.
Right.
I did believe. I sincerely believed. I studied with the intent of being a preacher in order to lead other people to Jesus. And it was the result of all that studying that forced me to accept the fact that I don't actually believe this. The claims don't make sense. They violate logic. They're self-contradictory, and et cetera, and move on. I didn't seek out to toss an eternal life away or to live a sinful life. I went studying with the intent of kind of proving this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. But what I found out when we went into further discussion with this particular believer on the blog was that he actually didn't know what an atheist was. And he went and he did the right thing. He looked it up, and he brought in a definition, which was a dictionary definition, which I completely respect. But then he didn't pay attention to the definition he provided, and then he left it on the floor and just went off saying that an atheist is whatever he defined it as. And he didn't really pay attention to the definition he had provided, which said anyone who disbelieves or denies a God. And when I tried to explain to him that a person who does not believe in God is an atheist, he wholly rejected that. As, no, that is not. It's somebody who says they know there's no God. And I said, no, go back and look at your definition. Anyone who disbelieves or denies the existence of a God. Yeah. I don't believe in a God, therefore I'm an atheist. No, you're not an atheist. I mean, he was really getting adamant.
You know why?
Well, yeah, because you can't...
It's not in his script.
Well, yeah, and that's what I was going to say. The next believer that came on was Emmanuel. Right. And one of the things that I saw him post was that he says atheists and free thinkers will claim that they just disbelieve in God, but that's just because it's easier to defend. But really they have this other agenda, and he goes into this weird conspiracy agenda that he believes in or whatever. It's nuts. But the truth is It is easy to defend, I don't believe in God. And I'm sorry that it frustrates Emmanuel, and I'm sorry that it frustrates Dan, that not believing in God is hard to attack. But it is hard to attack because it's a reasonable position. And what they find is that it's impossible to defend against it. And with Emmanuel specifically, when he's saying that, anything else is required to be an atheist, it's completely wrong. The fact is, if you don't believe in a God, you're an atheist. And whatever else you do with that attitude, whatever framework you build on your disbelief in God is your individual thing to build. Now, you might be able to find a group of people that's like-minded who builds their worldview on not believing in God, and they might, you might come to a group of people that think like you think. It doesn't mean that everyone who doesn't believe in God is going to think X, Y, or Z.
You should, if you think so, you should come to any one of our meetings. We got a whole group of atheists here, and there's differing opinions on all kinds of things because atheism only addresses one question. Do you actually believe that a God exists? Everything else is fair game, right down to what you consider moral, what your position is politically. Any of those questions,
Right.
They're all secondary to whether or not you believe in a God.
Well, we've actually had, I've seen more than one person write in either on the ACA website or come to the list and say, I feel like I'm the only conservative atheist in the world. And it's like, well, you're not, because there's others, and they've come forward. So it's not the majority of atheists that are going to be in the conservative bloc, but you can be a conservative political atheist, and it's possible they exist, and there is just no script that says, this is what I believe because I don't believe in God. If you don't believe in God, you're an atheist. Whatever else you believe or don't believe, that's an individual choice, and nobody tells you, there's no atheist group that's going to tell you you can't be an atheist if you're a conservative, or you can't be an atheist if you reject evolution, or anything.
Yeah. You
can pretty much believe anything else you want, and you're still an atheist if you don't believe in God.
Earlier when I said that it wasn't in Dan's script, Dan had come on specifically using stuff from Ray Comfort and the Way of the Master series. And one of Ray's big arguments is that there's no such thing as atheists, that God doesn't believe in atheists. Because, and he does this really funny example, in addition to the banana argument, which always makes me laugh. But he's like, and I won't try and do his accent, because we only do accents on the Nonprofit show. But he asks if you know how many hairs there are in the back of a wild Tibetan yak. And, of course, you answer no. And then he asks you something else that you couldn't possibly know, like how many grains of sand there are on, And then he says, so you don't know everything. So, Mr. Professing Atheist, what you really are is an agnostic. Ha-ha! We got you. You're not an atheist. And the truth of the matter is, he's right. In the definitions that he's using, I am an agnostic and an atheist because they're not mutually exclusive. Gnosticism and agnosticism, as we mention every couple weeks or so, addresses what you know or what you claim to know. And in the case of formal agnosticism, as defined by Huxley, it's a position that it's unknowable. And atheism and theism address what you believe. So you could actually be an agnostic atheist. You don't believe in a God, but you don't know for certain that there isn't a God. A Gnostic atheist, a Gnostic theist, or an agnostic theist. And I happen to think that most people, theist or atheist, fall into the agnostic category because the Gnostic agnostic has within it this idea of absolute certainty. Now, I chuck the notion of absolute certainty entirely. There's nothing that I can know with absolute certainty, apart from my own existence. I think Rene Descartes
Right. You think you are.
to establish that quite a long time ago. But in addition to the notion of absolute certainty not being relevant, the bigger question for me is how probable is something? Now, there's this idea of weak atheism and strong atheism, where the weak atheist position is something that a lot of people would label as agnostic atheism, where you don't believe in a God or you lack belief in a God, but you don't claim to know that. Then there's the strong atheist position, which says, I believe there is no God. And that's a kind of a subset of atheists, where they don't just they don't just remain unconvinced of the God claims, they are actually convinced of the claim that there is no God. I actually happen to fall in that group, and I still remain an agnostic, because in the sense that Ray Comfort's using the word, his Gnosticism and agnosticism apply only to absolute certainty. But my strong atheism has nothing to do with absolute certainty. It's about how probable or how likely something is. Now, I don't know for certain that there's no God. That would be silly. but I'm as sure that there's no God as I am that there's no fairies or unicorns. And as long as we're going to use that measure of certainty, then I'm as certain about this as I am about other things. The difference is that I'm willing to be proven wrong. Anybody can show up at any time and present good evidence or good argument, and I change. It's much in the same way, or in much in keeping with the scientific method. Whereas, religion makes a claim and it's never allowed to change, or it's not supposed to, even though we know it does.
Right.
Science is much more, broad, open-minded in that sense, where you've got a scientific model, which I think equates to everyone's worldview, and as long as it's consistent, reliable, as long as it makes predictions that continue to prove true, then it's a good model. And I think that the model of the world that does not include any kind of supernatural entities or actions is the one that is consistently reliable. And so I think I can be a strong atheist and an agnostic atheist. Right. But somebody out there agrees, because there are fights between even atheists about how to label things correctly and what qualifies for what. But we're way off from what you were talking about.
That's okay. I mean, yeah, but that was part of what I wanted to express, is just that all it is a disbelief in God. And, not believing in God has nothing to do with hating God, or with, thinking God wouldn't forgive you, or, and when I talk to, I'm just going to go ahead, I guess, and start reading some of the testimonials, because that's what I really didn't get to last time. I read a few, and I'm just going to, the ones I've read previously, I'm going to hit on the key areas of those, and then I'm going to read the other ones in a little bit more detail.
Okay.
So the first one that I had hit last week, I just want to go back. This is people who left Christianity in order to become atheist, or that are now kind of questioning their own Christianity. Maybe they're not quite an atheist. And this first one was Stephen, who his key quote that I wanted to use was, "Rather, my acceptance of evolution made me realize how badly Christian apologists had lied to me about origins. I became disillusioned by this, which prompted me to ask more questions and seek answers more aggressively, and that was what led to my atheism." And then I found also Kenneth, who posted at Talk Origins, and Kenneth was interesting because he does still believe in God. And what he had said was, "I believe in God. However, after reviewing specific details left out by the creationist website, I have come to the sincere conclusion that they are deceptive and purposefully crafty. I am a novice at science, no experimentation, just lots of reading. If I can locate information that shows their accusations to be unfounded, I'm sure that these people can and should do the same. They use their PhDs to induce your confidence in their research and observations." And here he's talking about the creationist website. Right. "Accuse evolutionists of bending evidence to fit their theory and they leave out information that is pertinent." Then Charles C. also wrote in to say, "I went out and studied different features and learned why those features take long lengths of time to form." And he's talking in terms of geology. Right. "I held those features in my hands and studied them in detail before I was willing to admit that the earth is older than 6,000 years old. I held fast to my Christian fundamentalist beliefs, but I was willing to learn and change those beliefs if proven wrong." And that contrasted so hard with a believer's testimonial statement, where he says, "My belief is firmly in the Bible, and there is not a word on your website which would shake my belief." And I want to kind of, put those together and say, there's not a word on your website which would shake my belief in God. And then you have this other person saying, "I held fast to my Christian fundamentalist beliefs, but I was willing to learn and change those beliefs if proven wrong." The difference here between the person who is at Talk Origins saying, "I don't care what you say, I'm going to believe what I believe, and there's nothing you say is going to impact my belief in God." And then you have another person saying, "You know what, I want to hold my beliefs, but if I see they're not true, I have to be willing to let them go." And this is that's just right to the heart of what happens with a deconverting Christian who becomes an atheist. You have a person who says, "You know what, if what I'm believing isn't right, I'm willing to consider that. And I'm not so prideful." I don't even know what to call it. It's funny that they accuse atheists of being prideful. And yet, how prideful is it to say, "I don't even care what evidence you have. I don't even care what it says. I don't care what it implies. I don't care what it means. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to believe what I believe no matter what I'm faced with." As opposed to saying, in the event that I'm wrong, I'd be willing to admit it. I just need to see. I need to look at this.
And there are different mindsets that actually transcend religion and aren't even necessarily caused by the religion, which is why you can see both of these.
Correct. And I think that's part of this too, is that you just have a different view. You have somebody who's considering reason, somebody who's willing to consider rationale, somebody who's willing to consider evidence, and then on the other hand you have somebody who says, I believe what I believe and I'm going to disregard evidence, I'm going to disregard reason. It doesn't matter what I find, what I see, no matter how wrong it might look like I am, I'm holding to this no matter what.
I don't know if I mentioned this last week or not, but Richard Dawkins has an example of this happened recently. There's a geologist who was studying and in I guess a PhD candidate perhaps, who basically, despite the fact that he knew all the evidence for the age of the Earth, said that unfortunately, even though I understand all this evidence and know all this evidence, the Bible says, in my opinion, the Bible says the Earth is 6,000 to 10,000 years old, and that's what I'm going to believe despite this. So he threw away an entire potential career in order to stay true to his beliefs. Now, on the one hand, I definitely can admire somebody who sticks to their beliefs. I have a problem, of course, with people who stick to those beliefs when they're faced with evidence that those beliefs are unjustified and may, in fact, be completely wrong. And again, we don't want to. We talk about Christianity and other religions in broad terms. I realize that not every Christian thinks the Earth is 6,000 to 10,000 years old. In fact, it may well be a minority of them who do. If you happen to think that the Earth is closer in age to 6,000 to 10,000 years than it is to 4.5 billion years, email me, call a little later, because I'd really like to hear why. Because the age of the Earth is something that's not even in dispute by any science. It's beyond dispute. The only people who are bringing up any claims are the creation scientists, the Ken Hams and Ken Hovens and stuff.
Well, I mean, I've actually heard this before as far as when he's talking about the forms, the geological forms, and how long they take to form. I mean, we know how long they take to form. And so a person either has to say, it took that length of time to form, or God created it looking like it took that length to form, and then asked you to believe something that defies what you really see right in front of you.
That's the same as the starlight issue, where there are stars that we know are billions of years away, and if you know anything about the speed of light, that means that the light's been traveling for billions of years. And the young Earth creationist claim is, well, God created it with the light already en route.
So basically
okay, he's God, I guess he could probably do that.
But what they're claiming, though, is that God set up a universe that makes it look like it's not 6,000 years old, and then tries to make people believe and say that they have to accept that it is. And I mean, this is really nuts. It's almost like saying God is trying to trick you into thinking he doesn't exist.
Well, it does. It sets up a proposition where their God not only wants you to believe something, and believe it based on faith, but believe it in spite of evidence that he himself set up in order to trick you.
To make you think
how
that it
fair is that?
right.
If you're a God, why are you screwing with me like that?
But I just want the same person that wrote in that nothing would shake his belief then went on to say, the difference is my belief results in actions in a world where only the fittest survive. Why care for a baby? Well, I think I emphasized that wrong. The difference is my belief results in action. I don't know what he means by that. In a world where only the fittest survive, why care for a baby? That's what he's asking. It's hard to read his writing. People are, when they write, I guess when you're posting online, you're not necessarily, writing something as clear as it might be. But in a world where only the fittest survive, why care for a baby? Well, he's obviously hitting on survival of the fittest, but he's also obviously illustrating his ignorance of that concept, because survival of the fittest has to do with offspring. So to say that where only the fittest survive, why would you care for a baby? You evolutionists. The problem is survival of the fittest has everything to do with caring for a baby. Because the whole point to fitness is, can you reproduce and can your offspring survive to reproduce? So reproducing offspring is the entire evolutionary goal. As far as, I hate to use that word goal, but I mean, the things that don't go extinct reproduced successfully. And if you don't take care of your offspring, you're not considered fit. It's not just about the individual fitness of some individual doing well. It has to do with, can you procreate?
And it's actually, we're talking about really we should be talking about it at the gene level anyway. But extinction is the rule, and survival is the exception.
Correct.
And it's the very survival trait of caring for a baby that ensures that your entire species gets to carry on. So
right, but
I don't know where he went, how he got from A to B there.
Well, what I'm saying, though, is that with him, he's saying nothing's going to shake my belief, and then he's throwing a question at evolution that shows that he's ignorant of evolutionary theory.
Yeah.
So the question that he's throwing is not a question that you would throw out if you understood the theory. And then you have on the other side somebody that posted at that same site that said, until recently I would have been frustrated by your postings and would have responded much the same as many of your anti-evolution readers. I am actually embarrassed by my previous ignorance and unwillingness to accept any evidence to the contrary of my heartfelt beliefs. So it's just different people looking at the same information, some of them saying, oh my goodness, this information conflicts with what I believe. What I believe does not appear to be correct. And then you have other people who are saying, nothing you can say is going to shake my belief, and then they're illustrating that they don't even understand what it is they're saying they're against.
And this is, this kind of frustrates me in the sense that, once again, the examples that we're talking about, the people are writing here, all address evolution and, in some cases, abiogenesis, which have nothing at all to do with atheism. I mean, they're completely independent. And not just in the sense that atheists aren't required to accept the scientific theory of evolution or anything else, but also in the idea that plenty of Christians do. I mean, Francis Collins, the head of the Human Genome Project, who I think he believes, for one of the dumbest reasons I've ever heard, something about a waterfall freezing into three, and it convinced him of the Trinity. But he's blatantly, he's an evolutionist, and not just the garden variety, I think God might have worked somehow through evolution. He believes in common descent, common ancestry among all primates, and that, yes, man and all the other great apes have a common ancestor. And his evidence for this, he says that he doesn't even need to see the fossil record, because the DNA evidence alone is beyond question about common ancestry. And there's the whole issue with chromosome 2, where you've got the fusion of two chromosomes, which is why humans end up having fewer pairs than the other great apes. But the actual DNA evidence for this is, I don't know what else you can say. Here you've got a very prominent evangelical Christian writes a book about how DNA is God's language or whatever, and yet all the time I'm hearing from people in email and on the forums and everything else, it's all this battle against evolution and equating it with atheism when that's not the case.
Right, and in fact, one of the ones I wanted to read also was from somebody that posted and said, having been raised as a believing Mormon, I have to say it was not until recently, when I stopped believing in Mormonism and in religion in general, that I became very interested in evolution. So here's a person who is saying, I lost my faith, and then I started looking at evolution. Well, evolution obviously didn't sway him, because he wasn't looking at evolution until after he left his beliefs, which what you're talking about is, it's not dependent on one another. It wasn't like someone came, he found evolutionary information, and then he dropped his belief. He dropped his belief, then he started looking to see what's real. There's another person that wrote in, about 2 years ago, I started investigating evolution from a neutral instead of polemic point of view. I quickly lost my creationist beliefs. Then on the other side, you have someone who writes in and says, throughout my life, I have had experiences of the sacred that left me feeling loved, grateful, helpless, and empowered, which I don't understand that. I don't know how you're helplessly empowered. But I find God in the Bible, in wonderful sagas of men and women managing their difficult situations. This person believes in God. He sees God in poems, musings on the human condition, and he believes in this because he has these feelings. He has feelings of being loved, grateful, helpless, and empowered, and he had experiences, I don't know what those would be, of the sacred, but whatever it is to him, it's very internal, very personal, and that seems to be a recurring theme.
Yeah. Let's. We already got the phone number up. The phone lines are actually full, so we're going to go and start taking some calls and get those out of the way, and we'll come back to more if we need to. Hey, I made a noise there. Can I play music? I can. Carl, you're on the air.
Hey guys.
How you doing?
Hello.
All right, how you doing? I had a comment on what you guys have been talking about before, and I wanted your opinion on that. Before that, I wanted to get both of your opinion on a common on a quote here. I'm reading out of a book by C.R. Slavinsky, and it's called Commentaries on Religion. I don't know if you've ever read anything out of this book here, but anyways, the quote, I'll read the short one. I was going to read a longer one, but anyways, I wanted your opinion on this. Fact-bashers unite!
It's been years since he's called. We'll fix that later. Phil, you're on the air.
Yeah, hey guys, how y'all doing?
Good.
Happy Sunday. Listen, the reason I called in is because, one of the reasons this is kind of maybe self-serving, but one of the reasons I'm an atheist is because I just don't like U.S. foreign policy. And I think a lot of the U.S. foreign policy is based on religion. Now,
I'll have to stop you there and say that that's the dumbest reason I've ever heard to be an atheist.
Well, I would agree, and I would hope you would talk me out of it. Because, unfortunately, so much of our U.S. foreign policy is based on religion. It's ridiculous.
Hang on.
I don't understand why the atheist community of Austin and the atheist community of the United States doesn't go to Congress, go to somewhere and say, quit favoring one group of religion over another group of religion. I think you would have to agree that's the case.
Sure, I'm opposed to favoring any religion over another or any religion over irreligion. I'm one of the strongest proponents of separation of church and state, which kind of why we put this little sign up here today, which fell over and you can't see it anyway. But I don't know exactly what your point is. Anybody who's, I'm hoping that you're joking, because if you say you're an atheist because you think religion has affected our foreign policy negatively, that's really, I'd prefer people...
It's an odd reason to be an atheist. I can see you saying, as an atheist, what really riles me is our religion and our foreign policy, but I have a hard time thinking that someone would have a belief in God and then reject that belief in God because they're unhappy with U.S. foreign policy.
Well, let's put it this way. I have an open mind with regard to evolution, things like that. I would just say that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. When I realized how much harm we were causing the rest of the planet based on our U.S. foreign policy, which in turn was based on religion, I just went ballistic, and that's kind of where I stand. I would like for you to talk me out of my position. I would like to go back to being Christianity, but it's just not worth it.
Well, if you called to have me talk you into being a Christian, you're
Wrong
about
show.
6 or 8 years too late.
Well, I can see you guys smiling and laughing, but the fact of the matter is, I don't understand why you guys don't get more enthused about changing U.S. foreign policy than
because
you do.
We can't do it on the show.
It's not allowed.
Well, it may not be
it's
allowed.
public. No, it's public access.
Maybe that's why I'm so frustrated with the whole situation. Let's move on to another call, guys.
All right, thanks a lot.
Just to point out, though, ACA does have a stance on religion and politics, but that's the show, because it's public access, can't really.
There's limits to what we can do, and also, there's the whole deal about thinking globally and acting locally, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're of course focused more on the Austin area and the atheists in Austin, although looking from the crowd that's actually in the studio this week, you wouldn't know we had anything to do with Austin, since it's mostly like Dallas and Houston folks who've come down this week.
But what we also have here, though, is a person who's an atheist for emotional reasons.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would encourage anybody, I don't care what you believe, no matter what you believe, if you believe it for emotional, stupid reasons, go take a nap, get back up, and start reading, and make sure all of your beliefs are things you believe for good reasons. Question everything. Don't accept things based on the authority that somebody else said, no matter how nice they are and how sweet they are. I don't care. There's a pastor from every religion who's the nicest, sweetest, most honest person who will tell you what he honestly believes, and he's wrong too. Don't take it on authority. Question everything and come up with the best possible reasons for what you believe. And if you end up, people watch the show and say, oh, well, you're an idiot and you atheists have made a poor decision and you just can't see the obvious evidence in front of you, that's fine. I'm like I said at the beginning, I'm not here to push what I believe down other people's throats. I'm here to discuss things. And for people who are interested, because as somebody who used to hold one set of beliefs and I've radically changed, and I've done so based on evidence rational argument, and for what I believe are good reasons. But I don't want to find out 10 years from now that I really had very, very bad reasons, that I made a horrible mistake, that I did things and believed things for the wrong reasons, which is why I'd like anybody, to show me why they think my reasons are wrong. How could you possibly be upset about being proven wrong? Because you've learned something. But we'll go on and take some more calls. We got Michael. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine.
Excellent. I do, by the way, like the way you really apply reason to get you to where you wind up. A lot of people don't do that these days, it seems. I was born and raised Catholic, first through 8th grade Catholic school, and through my whole path at 44, I've really come at this point to feel that I don't know. I certainly can't say that I believe God exists, but I certainly can't say that it's been proven to me that he doesn't.
You're an agnostic atheist.
I'm what?
That would make you an agnostic atheist.
Okay. Well,
just by
term.
like, yeah.
But my question for you is: do you see a lot of similarities, as I do, in the hardcore religious fanatics that really want to get in your face and prove to you that God exists? And it's, look at this evidence. I know for sure God exists, and this is how I know for sure. When really there is no way to know for sure. And then the hardcore atheists that know for sure God does not exist, and here A, B, and C, I'm going to show you how.
Yeah.
I see real similarities.
I see a similarity, except for one thing. I don't know any atheist that matches the description you're talking about.
Okay.
I'd like to meet one that says they know with absolute certainty that there is no God, because I think they're on, unless they've got some information that I think the rest of us need, they're on intellectually unstable ground.
Right.
And I think, I can't.
I need to be fair, though. I have met atheists who will say, hey, tell me about your God and I'll tell you why he doesn't exist.
Well, I'll be happy to say, you tell me about your God and I'll tell you whether or not I think he could exist.
And I'm going to say, I do relate a little bit to what you're saying, Michael. I think that there are people in any belief system who, for whatever reason, feel a need to almost force other people to agree with what they're saying.
Right.
I don't know what drives that mindset. There are people who are hardcore, you name it. You can almost have somebody that's, hardcore apathist or something. But
right.
Yeah, I've met people who just seem to be intolerant. And I'm not going to sit here and say I've never met an atheist that is intolerant. I have. And I have met,
Well, I think I've met some that are probably intolerant. I haven't met any that are the... What I think he was describing more was the equivalent of a literal fundamentalist or a literalist fundamentalist, where they're making a claim about absolute certainty and knowledge.
And I'm going to just take a guess, Michael, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that it was so much the claim that you were hitting at, or if it was just the attitude. I'm thinking in terms of the attitude. I've seen people with this attitude that you're an idiot if you don't agree with what I think.
I would agree. Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I would think so, because I'm a smart guy and I read and I can honestly say I don't know. So people that say they do for sure, to me, are almost like, I don't know, they're Rush Limbaugh or Bill O'Reilly, or they just know and they know because they're right.
Right, and we had a discussion on a blog recently with somebody that was very unhappy because everybody on the blog was basically saying, we disbelieve in a God. We're not saying that anybody logically knows or has disproven this. And he kept saying, you can't disprove it, so you can't be an atheist. And I said, well, I can't disprove leprechauns, but I don't believe in them.
Right.
I can't disprove your God, but I don't believe in it.
Right.
And he just kept saying, no, you have to know there's no God to be an atheist. And it's like, no, if I don't believe in God, I'm an atheist.
I was going to ask you about that, because why would I be an agnostic atheist? Because it seems like atheist is saying not what I'm saying, which is I'm saying I don't know, and I thought atheist was always, I know he doesn't exist.
That's because people have a misunderstanding of what atheism is. Atheism is a lack of belief in a God. And what you said earlier is that you don't know if you believe. When people believe in something, they know it. If you can't say, I believe in God, then you lack belief in God. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Okay. A person who lacks belief in God is an atheist. An agnostic is a person who says that knowledge regarding God is either not available or is insufficient to determine whether or not there is a God. So you can't know. The agnostic says no one can know there is a God or know there is not a God. The atheist says, I can't say I believe in God. I don't believe it.
Right.
I happen to think that some of this is question dodging. I'm not making any accusation directly at you.
Yes.
If I were to ask you if you believed in fairies, what would you say?
I would say no.
No. And if I ask you if you believe in God, what do you say?
He says,
I would say, I don't know, maybe it's just being born and raised for
I understand.
Years. It's hard for me to really substantially say that God doesn't exist. But
I know.
I can say that
hang
in 24
on.
years I've never seen any evidence that he exists.
Fine.
Right. That's not the question.
You actually answered the question right off the bat, because the first words that you said were the ones I was actually expecting, which is I don't know. Which is what you said at the beginning when you talked about whether or not you believed in God, and you said, I don't know. And that's why I said that I think some of this is a matter of question dodging. Because if I ask you, do you believe in fairies, the answer quickly is no. And if I ask, do you believe in God, the answer is, I don't know. Well, I didn't ask what you knew, and I'm not picking on you. I'm trying to point out the difference between the idea of Gnosticism and agnosticism, which does address what you know or claim to know, and theism and atheism, which is about what you believe.
When you say I don't know if there's a God or not, you're saying that's an agnostic statement. It's saying I don't know. When you say I can't say I believe in God, well, that's an atheist statement. That's saying I don't have belief. So if you don't have the belief, then you're a non-believer. And people have a hard time with that because they tend to look at atheism as a statement of knowledge, but it's really not. So when you can't say you believe in it, you don't have the belief. So definitionally, that makes you an atheist. Now, your personal understanding of atheism may make that a little bit uncomfortable to say, because it's like, oh, wait a second, but I don't know if there's a God or not. But that's not what the question really is. It's, do you believe?
Which is why there are a bunch of people running around with all kinds of different labels in the non-theist category of whether it be free thinker, some prefer agnostic, some are secular humanists, rationalists, naturalists, materialists.
But
whatever.
I fall exactly where you're falling, which is I don't know, I don't have the knowledge of a God, and so I'm an agnostic. And since I lack knowledge that there is a God, I can't say I believe in it. So I'm an atheist because I don't have the belief in God that some people have.
Right.
And
I'm with you guys too, or I don't know who made this statement, one of you two did, about, if someone, I'm a smart guy, someone just come explain it to me, show me what I'm missing, right? Show me that God exists and show me how I can comfortably believe what you're saying, but nobody's really been able to do that, even starting back,
It always strikes me as funny when I hear the arguments against atheism, like some of them she brought up, where people just want to reject God or lead a sinful life or whatever. Only 15%, or I should say 15%, amazingly, of the National Academy of Sciences believe in any kind of personal God. Now, that's much lower than the general population.
Right.
And I don't want to make any kind of appeals to authority to say, look at all these smart people who don't believe in God. My thing is that why do you think that's the case? Why is it that there is some kind of correlation between education? No, I'm not talking about intelligence and whether or not somebody's stupid, but between education and gaining knowledge and a belief in a God. That I don't want to make too much of a correlative link there. But it's something worth investigating. And when you've got 75 to 80% of the population of the United States, maybe as much as 90 on some occasions, believe in some sort of personal God, and then among the elite of the sciences, only 15% do, surely there can't be that many scientists who are just rebelling so that they can go out and party and not have to worry about confession afterwards. Maybe there's a little bit more behind this.
Oh, you don't know that the scientists are huge partiers. Those guys, they're crazy.
Yeah.
that's right.
As soon as they take those pocket protectors out, they get down.
Exactly. You don't know what they got in those beakers.
I know. They're brewing up
Stuff we could only dream of. That's right.
Thanks a lot for calling, Michael. We're going to let you go and move on to some other calls. Yeah, I love. I don't know. I'll just stop there. Better not get into it too much. Joey, how you doing?
Yo, what's up?
Hey.
Hey, I was just, I have a question on why you guys are so focused on promoting atheism.
What do you mean promoting?
Like TV shows, why do you feel you have to tell everyone about what you don't believe?
I don't feel that I have to tell everyone, and that's kind of a
Why do you have your own show?
Because I think that these issues are important, and as somebody who used to believe something different, I'm providing some of the same information that allowed me to change my mind, and in some cases, I think it's a kind of a freedom issue of freeing your mind from the shackles of religion and being not realizing just how wonderful life actually is, because the notion of this life is diminished by this broader notion of an eternal life to come. Now, I don't go door to door, and I don't walk into people's churches, and I don't try and force people to believe anything or say anything, but the atheist community of Austin exists primarily as a community to provide the atheists who are already here, those people who feel like they're the only ones because everybody else on their block is driving to church or having a church social and they have nobody else to talk to. That's what this organization primarily exists for. What we talk about on the show is pretty much whatever the person on the phone wants to talk about.
That's a good answer. That was a good answer.
Why is it, instead of asking me why do I want to promote atheism, I guess I should be asking, why do you want to ask me why I want to promote atheism?
That's clever, and I appreciate I appreciate what you're doing. I'm not trying to sound like a dickhead or nothing.
No, you're fine.
You don't. And it also, I agree with Matt. I mean, I would say that the reason I'm sitting here is like twofold. Number one, I think, what was that study recently about? We're the least trusted minority in the United
University
States.
of Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, where people have a real problem and prejudice against, I think, atheism because they don't understand really what it is. It sounds.
No, I don't understand. I mean, I don't have a problem with you at all. It's just I was talking to my roommate about it. It just seems like you.
Yeah, it's puzzling.
You feel the need to persuade everyone to not believe in God.
No, I'm not here to convince anybody
that?
to believe anything. But I'm not. That's not why I'm here.
I think I'd prefer it. I mean, I don't come on necessarily to convince other people. There are in the studio audience actually today people who are not atheists, and I've never tried to convince them that they should be. I
just don't get what's the point in having a show. Why can't you keep it to yourself?
Why should I?
I don't know.
I'll put it to you this way. There's 3 public access channels in Austin, 10, 11, and 16. Channel 11 is 24 hours a day, nothing but religion. And there's so much of it that it spills over into this channel and sometimes preempts my show.
When you're hungry, you got to eat, right?
Yeah?
Yeah.
What?
You understand where I'm coming from?
No. Is this non sequitur hour? Did I miss something?
No, this is like, it's like religion is food, and you can't eat if you're atheist.
Okay. You lost me.
No, what I would say, too, is what he was talking about as far as information. I used to be a fundamentalist in the Church of Christ, and I would say... Okay. But the reasons for my belief, when I started to look further into it, I had to spend a lot of hours in the basement floor of a 5-story library at the university I was attending in order to look up information on religion and religious history to try to find out where the beliefs that I was being taught came from.
Yeah.
When I started to look them up, what I found out was that what my church was telling me was not accurate. It took a lot of my time and a lot of my energy to get that information, and luckily today we have things like the internet. Back then we didn't have the internet that I could just go to and look up this information, and I see this as an opportunity to allow someone to also maybe question their belief. They may question their belief and then decide that their belief is right and stick with it. But they may be like me, someone who's searching and says, is there an option, or is what I've been told true? And I think that it's a good thing to encourage people to go and look up, for themselves to see if what they believe and what they've been told is actually accurate.
So basically, there's no real golden chariot we get to ride on, like to heaven.
I don't believe in it. No.
Okay, so there's no unicorns, none of that.
I don't believe in them. No.
No.
Okay. Well, I mean, that was the question I had, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joey. Did I hit that too quick? I'm sorry. Everybody started laughing. I thought he was done.
Yeah.
One of the things he was talking. Oh, forget it. I'll come back to it later. I've completely forgotten what I was getting ready to say because of all the laughter and giggling. John, how you doing?
Yes,
Hey, I want to say I watch your show every chance I get. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wanted to say I watch your show every chance I get.
Which would be every Sunday.
Hey,
Oh,
no.
you can tune in on Google
whenever I
Video.
can. Well, sometimes I replay it, don't you?
Yeah, there used to be a replay. It's also up on Google Video now.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, I had a couple questions for you. One, if you could define belief, because that's one of the main problems I have with atheism in terms of it not having substance.
I'll answer your question as long as you answer one honestly. Is this James?
No.
You liar.
I'm serious. I don't even know who you're talking about.
All right. How I define belief, I think in the sense that we've used it most often, is accepting a claim to be true.
Okay, now isn't that more knowledge?
No, because knowledge is a subset of belief. Knowledge is justified true belief with a little bit more to it than that. But you can believe something and it may or may not count as knowledge until it's justified and true.
Okay, so you're saying that lack of belief means a lack of, in what you said, the lack of
a lack of accepting a claim as true, yes.
Accepting a claim. So then I guess there would be some sort of reasoning, some sort of science in that idea.
There doesn't have to be.
I mean, what I'm trying, because my experience of belief from the religious part is that it's more about trust or knowing, and then that delves more into faith, which is the trust part.
Yeah,
you have to have trust. You have to have faith. Means absent of proof.
Correct.
Right up front. So belief so the idea of that the lack of not what did you say? The lack of not knowing.
Well, I wouldn't. When I say belief, I'm talking about acceptance of a claim. So a lack of belief would be a non-acceptance of the claim.
So a non-acceptance of the claim that there is something out
Sure.
Right.
The
like,
claim,
for
$20,
example,
I have $20 on my wall.
Yeah, let's say if I told you that there's a leprechaun that lives under a rock in my backyard and you say, I don't accept that, I don't believe it. That's disbelief.
Okay, so it doesn't come from the trust or from the sense of faith, because that's obviously, I think most Christians would argue that they know that God is there, okay, and they would argue that, and you can, whatever proof you want to say, but they would argue that they know.
I think you're right.
Belief really isn't, belief is almost more on their sound reasoning abilities. Not necessarily on anything outside of them, though certainly they would say the Bible would be their proof of the God and so forth, and whatever natural occurrences they want to claim as proof of God. But the reason why it just seems sort of I see what you're saying, lack of belief. You're taking out trust and you're taking out faith, because I can say I believe.
I wouldn't say you're completely taking out.
I can believe in someone is going to do for me something, even though I have really no proof of it, even though there might be tons and tons of evidence that suggests it could be proof of it, but it's almost a trust issue when I'm saying I believe in someone, because it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. And that's the difference. In atheism, they're sort of saying that you have to trust the negative. And,
no.
And it seems like you're trying to split the word to mean to go into trust. And you're saying, well, look, we're only going to accept one part of belief, and that is the definition we're going to use, and that's how we're going to define belief.
No,
instead you're okay. Go ahead.
Hang on. When we're talking about belief and whether or not you believe something, and take Tracie's example of the leprechaun under the rock in her backyard, right. You're either going to believe that claim or you're not. Now, how do you go about, in everybody's mind, basically we're trying to constantly build a worldview, and we've got a toolbox that we use to analyze any claim. And it's all about training ourselves to be able to do the analysis quickly and as quickly and accurately as possible, because you don't want to be sitting around forever trying to make a decision about it.
But isn't that more method and has nothing to do with, you're saying that this method is substantiating your claim, your ultimate hypothesis, but it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your own will to validate that method, meaning that I will this to be true because it makes sense to me.
I don't will anything to be true, and I don't believe anybody else can either.
Well,
if I could will something to be true, I wouldn't be on the TV show.
You can't possibly not believe in your own thinking. Belief is a trust in something that you can't possibly have no knowledge of.
No.
Yeah, there is some belief to that.
I believe.
I'm not saying you don't have.
Hold on. I believe I'm holding a pen. I happen to also know that I'm holding a pen, or at least I know that I'm holding a pen as far as this reality is concerned. I don't know how far down the rabbit hole you want to go, but I believe I hold this pen. Now, that's a belief which doesn't require any trust or anything else. It's based on evidence. There are other things that I can believe that I may not necessarily have direct experiential knowledge of, but I can believe them for very good reasons. For example, we've used the orbit of Pluto before. We know how long it takes Pluto to orbit the sun, and I believe that Pluto has orbited the sun at least one time, even though I haven't been along and I haven't been alive long enough to see it, and nobody's known about Pluto long enough for it to make an entire orbit. But the math's there, and it says that it's orbiting the sun, and I happen to believe that that's true. I could be wrong. I believe Australia exists. I've never been there. I have friends who've been there. I've never experienced it personally. But I believe it, and I believe it for good reasons. And that's the point that I was getting at before, is that we haven't eliminated this idea of trust. What we've done is say trust is something which is earned by reliability, consistency. Faith, on the other hand, is the permission slip that we give each other to believe things without good reason, to believe things without the requisite evidence, with the appropriate level of trust. Faith is just saying, we can go ahead and believe this even though we don't have a good reason to believe it. I'm talking about believing things for good reasons, based on evidence.
And I would also add, though, that like the claim whether or not Australia exists is something that is verifiable.
Right.
You are believing it right now, but if you wanted to verify it, you can.
Yeah,
you
and
can
that's part of the
find
reason
out
why I
whether
would
there's
believe it.
Yeah.
If you tell me something, no matter how convincing you are, and it's not something that I could ever verify if I wanted to, then I'm probably not going to believe it.
If it's not verifiable, then the question is why would anyone believe it?
Yeah. So I put you on hold. Have I answered your question?
Okay, no, I understand what you're saying. And to some degree, I mean, I still think you narrowly, you sort of just, you take away the trust part of it. And I also think you're taking away from the historical reason atheism became a word unto itself, became to symbolize certain knowledge.
How am I taking away from that?
It doesn't have anything to do with knowledge.
I mean, first of all, atheism as it's used now goes back to in 16th century France, but it was originally also used by the Romans as that was their label for the Christians. And it was basically, it meant anybody who doesn't believe in the conventional gods. The Christians didn't believe in the Roman God, so the Romans called them atheists. And then you had these Christian apologists coming out, like Athenagoras of Athens, who comes out and says, no, we're not really atheists. So we know how you're using that word, but this word should really mean somebody who denies the existence of God. And he goes back and tells us about Dioscorus in ancient Greece, who was supposedly the first atheist, the first person to publicly come out and say there were no gods. So, but I don't know how I'm ignoring or diminishing the history of atheism and how it came to be, and where that goes to your trust.
Well, it's within your example itself. You're saying that the Romans called the Christians atheists,
right?
And they called atheists because they didn't believe in polytheism or whatever, or several different gods versus their one God. So by it's in that sense, the Romans didn't necessarily have proof of it. They certainly could point out things, but what I'm trying to say is that there is a certain sense of humanitarianism in the word belief that the atheist experience tends to take out.
Why?
And the importance of it is, the reason why I'm trying to acknowledge that is because by taking that out, it's relative, the whole word, the whole movement in it of itself seems, how would you say,
I have a hard time accepting your I have a hard time accepting your propositions for two reasons. You start off by saying that we're taking trust out of it, and then I explain how we're not taking trust out of it, and I give you better definitions. And now you start saying that atheism takes the humanitarianism out of something. Right,
and I'm still going on my main argument that it does take trust out. You're saying that you proved otherwise, and I understand. I'm saying Okay,
No.
so my proof that trust is being taken out of it is because...
Trust in what? I don't understand what you're saying. And when you say...
Meaning that I trust that you...
Hang on, let me ask you this too, and I'll let you answer it. You've said that something about atheism is taking the humanitarianism. What is it taking the humanitarianism out of? What are you talking about?
Okay, well, let me back. You're right, because you did bring up an argument. You're saying that you've somehow successfully proving that.
You got 3 minutes, and then I got to go to other callers.
So you have trust that it sounds like that you haven't established that, and I'll try to establish that trust has been taken out of the word belief by you taking.
And I'm saying that trust is never a part of the word belief. But
right,
I'll give you your
saying trust is never part of. I'm saying that it is part of belief. That is it.
Then you're wrong.
No, because
I mean, this is definitional. This is
well, now you can't. You just said I'm wrong.
Yes.
And I'm saying you're wrong. So where are we going to go from there?
I'm going to hang up, and you're going to go look in a dictionary and find out. You're going to go read a philosophy book about belief. Belief is literally just acceptance of a claim. Now, your reasons behind that, and this is what I tried to do when I started to bring up the methodology for this, that's something that you didn't want to talk about. You just wanted to go back to belief and say that we've taken the trust out of it. And then when I explain that we haven't, you come back and say that we did. Well, we're not going to get anywhere, so you can go read a book and look up the definition of belief, which is acceptance of a claim, and look up something about knowledge, which is justified true belief, and then we can start over. But there's other people online, and I don't want to make them wait forever. You can also email tv@atheist-community.org. I'm always happy to talk about this stuff because I like it. But if we're not getting anywhere and spinning our wheels on the show, I got to move on. So I apologize if that's the case, but call me back. Okay. Got a note from a studio about another caller. As a reminder, since I haven't said it enough, after the program we go to Threadgills. The show's on until 6 o'clock, which is about 25 minutes away or so. And any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us. The individual who was just on the phone, you're welcome to actually come down and talk if you want to as well. As long as you're not trying to cause a problem or ruin the dinner, I'm more than happy to have conversations with anybody who wants to. It goes back to what I've said a couple times tonight, which is I don't necessarily go out and look for arguments and discussions, but anybody who wants to come and have an argument or a discussion, I'm up for that almost any time, except when I'm playing dominoes. Then you got to back off. But anyway, we'll go on to Steve. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm reading a book I picked up the other day that I think could be related to your topic. It's called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, and it's a book about subconscious decision making, and it's written by a guy. I think he's a New Yorker writer, and it's a book about neuroscience and stuff like that. But it's very non-scientific. It's more anecdotal. But what he's talking about is how people make decisions, kind of intuitively, like in moments, about situations, and at a level that is not accessible to the mind. And then a lot of times later we come back and explain to ourselves and to everybody why we made these decisions. And there's interesting experiments they've done on this. It's a kind of a fascinating thing. But when you start relating it to your topic, it's why do people decide? I think people do decide to believe in the sense that they decide to accept or reject the claim, just like you were just talking about. And by some criteria, they make that decision. And either it's through analysis, like in their foremind, but sometimes it's just, that doesn't seem right to me, or it does seem right to me, and that's why they believe, or what they believe. Right. And then they explain it, somehow with... or other people help them explain it, or
rationalize. Like I think you're talking about rationalization.
Well, it could be rationalization. I recommend this book. It's kind of fun to read, and it's about how people think and how people really make decisions. And it's kind of at the animal level, not the analysis level. So.
What was the name of the book again, real quick?
Your phone's Blink.
Blink, okay.
Because it's about making decisions in the blink of an eye, and then coming, and it's. But a lot of times we're really good at this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, this has come up twice in the last
Right.
couple of weeks about premonition and intuition and things
Yes.
like that. There's actually somebody else calling who called last week to talk about it, so we'll get to that in a couple of minutes, I guess, and kind of tie it together. But is that all you have, Steve?
Well, I just want to say thanks for having a great show.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Steve. Appreciate
Bye.
it. Yeah. Well, I tell you what, we'll go on to oh, sorry. Let me put you back on hold because they jumped this around. Is this James?
Yep.
Hey, how you doing?
I don't know. Last week you had a caller,
Mm-hmm.
the second one,
Yeah.
and I couldn't get through to respond. And your buddy that was up there, and you two, it's hard to explain to you something. I could understand where he was coming from better than you did, because I go through the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I could walk down the street and actually meet somebody, and there's a vision of what's going to take place. This is no joke.
The kind of deja vu thing.
In a sense, I don't understand it, and I know that's why I would like to know who this dude was. If y'all ever get him to call back, let us two come to one of y'all's dinners, and we would try to get something, experiences that I have gone through. It's unreal. And don't ask me if it's from my being a partial Native American. My father was. And, okay, it goes back to real strange things. I could take the whole show and tell you experiences.
No, you couldn't.
I know it's gone over there.
I only got about 20 minutes left. I can't let you take the whole show.
But anyway, this is what I'm trying to say. When you say on this deconversion, this is why I quit. There was things that they thought I was cuckoo about, but they actually happened. I can tell you for real, if Bonnie was, I shouldn't have said her name, but I did. If she was still alive, a few days before Whitman ever got on that UT tower, she went looking for her sister because she knew she was going to be on that drag. She knew something was going to happen. She told him, she told me. She told her shrink what was going to happen, an MD, and when this all took place, he got her into the office extremely quick. She was a person that could sit down that way, and it was really, don't ask me why there's few. I don't believe in a fortune teller, and I don't believe in a psychic. But what I do, it's somebody, if you walk into the room with me, I'm not looking at you to study you or anything, but if there is some form of a connection, don't ask me what it is.
Okay.
I've had it to be there before. The woman asked me in the hospital about something one day, and I looked at her and I said, why? She said, I feel something from you, and this is the truth. And I said, well, if you think that your husband is cheating, go home and catch him. He is. Sure enough, she told me 3 days later she's about ready to kill him because she took off early and went home and caught him. Don't you grin? But these are things I don't.
It was a funny story. How could I
know,
not grin?
but it's not where you feel when it's there. It's like if you was to sit down and open a book and there it is in front of you. You don't know what's on that next page. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
And this is happening, so I don't know what it is, and neither did that caller last week. It was hard for him to explain to y'all, if you remember, what he felt and what came
Right.
to him.
And nobody else knows either.
And
I mean,
that's what
I
I'm
can't
saying.
explain
There's no
something.
way-
I can't explain something that goes on in somebody else's head. All I can do is come up with the best approximations and the best explanations they can. But even lacking an explanation, that doesn't make any kind of supernatural explanation the correct
No,
one. Which
but-
is, and I don't think you'd accept that either.
No,
Yeah.
because what happens, I don't know what it is, and this is what I'm trying to explain. If there is a energy, as we all have, because I believe in auras, because I've seen them, and I can read it. Even told my MD one day something. He looked at me like I was crazy. 3 days later at home, he called me and he said, "Why did you say that?" And I said, "Well, go find out from your own physician if you'll do it."
Okay,
I want
hang
to
on.
say something to him.
All right, let her talk.
Yeah, James, I just want to say something to you. I studied anthropology at the University of Central Florida, and one of my professors there, an anthropology professor, actually would be very sympathetic to what you're describing. He did a triple-blind study on a psychic that he met in a town called Cassadaga, Florida. He went to Cassadaga because his area of expertise was in shamanism, and he believes in, I don't know how else to call it, he believes in supernatural experience.
Okay.
He was the only professor on the campus that did. He did set up a triple-blind study in which he got this particular psychic to come in and try to read archaeological objects that the man had no idea what they were. They cataloged his responses. They sent them away. A group that was completely unrelated to the setup. They call it triple-blind because you have different people evaluating different stages of it so that it doesn't get contaminated by the person doing the research who may actually believe what's going on. Unfortunately, the study didn't verify what he was hoping to verify, because he felt strongly that the man had some sort of capacity for reading objects or reading people, I think is what you're describing. He told a story about shaking hands with the man when he first met him, and the man gave him what he felt was a very detailed explanation about a ring that he was wearing, explained to him the situation in which it was given to him, a lot of things that convinced him that this man was actually psychic. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I don't know. I believe...
That's what I'm saying.
I believe, James, that you are experiencing things that you cannot explain and don't know how to describe, and that most people are not going to be able to relate to these things very well, because most people are not in a situation to either have an experience like this or to... It's a hard thing to verify. I'm going to say that, and when it's studied, it's usually not verified, and so people will tend to not believe it happens. I can't say whether or not you're experiencing something like what you're describing, but I'm going to say that I know that I don't believe you're lying. I just have. It's just hard for this to be verified, and until it can be verified, it's going to be very difficult to have other people believe what you're describing is true.
I know, and the only thing I could ever tell you is to take the person that lives here in my neighborhood, who was horribly frightful to me. If you could I would give you the name of her shrink, let you go talk to him and let him tell you what she told him, and God, all this came true. And he sit there, he put her on a brainwave test. This was true, brought her in. He said, next time this is happening, get in here. She worked with me. She called me, then asked her really what was going through. He read her on the patterns, and this is what he couldn't realize on the brainwave patterns. Give me a chance, Matt.
I'm listening. I just wasn't sure I understood what you said.
I
know you're already thrilled that Tracie answered you before, because she's way nicer than I am.
But anyway, it is something that I don't know how to tell you. And that's why I say the other caller couldn't tell you last week.
No, we had a long discussion about intuition and things like that beforehand, and it kind of relates to what another caller was saying earlier, and also to something else that I started to bring up, and that's this idea of creating a toolbox in your mind for how to determine the truth or fiction of a claim. And we do this all the time without thinking about it. And it's something we're doing from birth. We're constantly trained on how to do this. If you want an example, just take like a baseball and toss it up in the air and catch it in your other hand. Your brain just went through all kinds of calculations, even before we had any understanding of gravity and 9.8 meters per second squared, etc. Long before that, you could still do it. So your brain's incredibly powerful. Now, you can do that a little bit, and you can actually do it with your eyes closed. So you've trained your brain something that may qualify as subconscious thought at a level that's different, of course, from blinking or pumping your heart or anything else. You can do the same thing, and you do, for any kind of claim, whether it be your claim about seeing auras and there being some relevant connection between what you saw and what actually exists in reality, or any other claim, whether it be, do I have $20 in my wallet, do I have a leprechaun in my backyard? And the way you do that is you build up a tool set that analyzes those claims reliably. And,
all right.
There are times when you're just not going to be able to come up with a good explanation. We are basically engineered by evolution to accept the word of authority from birth. It's a good thing. It's a good thing in general for children to just accept without question the words of their parents. If you live in Australia, since I've brought it up twice now, and there's somebody on the phone, and your parents tell you not to go swimming in the creek in the outback because there's a monster out there that will kill you, it's probably good for you to believe them.
In the outback there, all wild animals.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing, and that helps us survive. But we also need to learn when we become, when we get of age, that it's okay to also question authority, because the truth has nothing to fear from investigation and critical examination. The truth doesn't need to hide, and the truth can't be proved to be a lie by investigation. Investigation only reveals more and more about the truth.
But what I'm saying, like you're trying to say, in a sense, is that somebody puts a suggestion up there into your mind. This isn't what I'm trying to get over to y'all. This is something that is clicked. It's right there. I could walk down the street or something. It's not with everybody. It might be 1 in every 2 million people that's walked on that street that they are coming down. It's not common. It's not daily. It might hit me once or twice a year that things happen, and it's just that way.
And this is the problem with trying to verify it.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
It's not common, and what is hard to really say is it's too strange. I can't tell you, but there used to be a guy that first come on your show a long, long time ago. His aura was very distinct. I don't see nothing over the TV with you. Neither one of you.
It's because I don't have an aura. If you don't believe in him, you don't get one.
You might have one. See, if you just wait. If you're thinking it's the power of suggestion, maybe you're going to believe it now that I told you I don't see one, you're going to say it.
I believe that you believe you see something. That's without doubt. I have no idea what it could be. I have no idea if it's real. I have no idea if perhaps there's some supernatural explanation, but I don't have any good reason to think there is. It kind of goes back to when you think about David Hume's example when he's talking about epistemology, and he says, whenever I'm told, that, for example, that someone rose from the dead, I think to myself, is it more reasonable that somebody actually rose from the dead or that some person has either been deceived or is trying to deceive? In this case, I don't think you're trying to deceive, but what I do think may have happened is that you may have been deceived, and I'm not saying that you've been fooled by some great new age con. I think that our brains are very powerful and misunderstood, and that when freaky things happen to us, which are going to happen to everybody from time to time, you're going to have a brain hiccup or whatever, and you don't have a good explanation for it. We're very prone to mistaking correlation and causation. We're very prone to overemphasizing the hits or the extraordinary events and de-emphasizing the millions of other times that we've walked by somebody and not seen an aura type thing. So I don't have any doubt that what you're saying is true, but I don't have any reason to think that it's supernatural.
But there's reasons that puts doubt into my mind.
Fair enough.
And when this caller called last week, I said, well, he couldn't explain it to you. I can't explain it to you. There is, as we say, what are they, 6 senses? Maybe there's something that we don't, in this world, that we really don't understand. I don't know, because that's what I'm saying.
We don't know either.
And I don't know either.
And
but until somebody actually demonstrates a good reason that I should think there is, then I'm not going to waste any time on it.
Because you were talking about on this thing on deconversion, because when I went that way, I said, if they're going to pray for your soul to go there, up. All they did, I'm going to be honest with you, in Hyde Park Baptist Church, as I told you before, one time my mother was a bed patient in my home for 7 years or longer. I took care of her, another member of the family, and then the outside help that we had to have. When they came in here, and the man watched, one of the associate pastors came in this house, watched me clean her up one day when she saw it into the junk. He looked at me, he said, that's your mother. I said, well, yes, what do you want me to do, let her lay in her own waste? And he didn't. I said, I was trained as a medical tech in Korean War, and I said, this is nothing to me. I said, it's common, she does it, and everything else. So this one, he sent a nurse back here about a week later to check to see what we were doing that weekend, and I was doing it and all this stuff. He came back the third time, and this is what he told me. She hadn't tithed in 2 years, so we were wondering really what was wrong with her and why she had come to church. I know, that's what I'm saying. This is part of the reason why I just say it's money. He said, why don't you take her place? And he said, she's not going to go nowhere. She can't get out of the bed. My answer and reply to him was, well, you stupid a-hole. What if the house caught on fire, she burns to death? Who's going to be the criminal? Yeah. I would be caught for neglect. And I started thinking, I said, if that's all they thought of was money and all that stuff, I said, that's not for me. And that's when I said I quit going back to church. And then it's, to me, I've lived on twice as long as you have or more. And this is why my life experiences in that sense is that just made me feel like, if they can sit there and say, this is the good book, this is what you follow, they're not doing it themselves. So
I'm with you on the hypocrisy.
Do what?
I'm definitely with you on the hypocrisy. Okay. I got to let you go, James. Right, thanks for calling. We'll talk to you again later. We got about 5 minutes or so left, and Kevin on the phone to tell me about Australia.
Yeah, I was wondering how your example is relevant to atheism at all, because we know that Australia exists and we know that people have been there. I'm sure you've met someone who's been there.
Yeah.
I don't, okay, depending on how you define knowledge, I may or may not know. For the people, and I would agree, I know it exists because of how I'm defining knowledge. But for the people who were calling in earlier with these ideas of absolute certainty and knowledge based only on personal experience type thing, then I wouldn't know.
And do you think the last guy smoked meth or was just really drunk? Cause, like,
no, I think he's just a nice guy who been in Texas and is old. He's a good friend of the show.
I've watched your show a couple times, and I have to say that I am atheist myself, but I can't agree with you, man. Like, I think...
About what? I mean, obviously you agree with me about one thing, so where are we not
I agree
seeing?
with you about the David Hughes point. That's probably the first true thing I've ever heard you say, but I just...
So you're an atheist, and the only thing you agree with me about is the Hume quote from earlier.
No, that's the first true thing you've ever said.
Oh, it's the first true thing I've ever said.
Yeah.
How much longer before this turns into a prank call, or are you actually just done? I mean,
No.
if we disagree...
No. There is no prank call. I just think you're a fucking idiot.
Okay. Do you have a good reason for that? You hung up on me. That's the best prank call ever.
And what a way to end the show.
That's just crazy. We got like 6 minutes left. We've cleared out all the phone lines. I want to hit a couple of things real quick. As a reminder to all the ACA members, what has been membership renewal time for the past couple of months or so. Elections are coming up. The weekend of May 6th, you can renew then. The information's up at the ACA website, www.atheist-community.org. Anybody who wants to email the show and tell me I'm an idiot or talk about other things can email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, all the co-hosts, and some of the people behind the scenes. What else is going on? We had Lori Lippman-Brown in today, and that was awesome. Great lecture. We'll try and get some information posted about that at both the website and maybe in a podcast. The Secular Coalition of America. She's doing great work up there. She had a lot of good information about various bills that are coming up that all apply to the separation of church and state issues, and who is actually on her side or our side. And as much as I, may criticize different religious beliefs on occasion, there are certainly many religious individuals who I have a great deal of admiration for. We just happen to disagree on one or two, maybe 5 or 6 things. But, like the Reverend Barry Lynn, for example, he's America's United for Separation of Church and State. He's awesome. And he's on our side, essentially, on a lot of this church-state issues. Thanks for putting that up. I was getting ready to ask them to. Put it back up. I know I'm messing up your credits. Put it back up. I know you can hear me. It's a list of the folks who actually do all the work on the show. Steve Elliott, Joe Rhodes, our producers, Shelley Cadena, Shelley Roberts, John Iacoletti, who's back there on the camera right now and has been mumbling. And I wondered if you could hear him earlier when he said stuff. Thanks a lot, everybody, for tuning in. We got, there's less than 30 seconds left. Do you got anything you wanted to get out real quick?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, we'll be back on in a week or so. Remember about the National Day of Reason, May 3rd, and the elections, and Vic Stenger will be here as a guest. Lots of stuff we're looking for. Thanks to everybody in the studio audience, some of them who drove quite a ways to come down.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, you guys say goodbye. Yeah, we'll see you all next week. Thanks.